Welcome to the DeviceDojo, probably the hottest edition we've ever done, at least so far. You can see me in my summer outfit. Hi, I'm Joseph, and this is where we tackle the practical side of securing connected devices, from over-the-air updates and fleet management to the broader challenges like incident detection, response, compliance, encryption, and more and more and more. Always actionable and hands-on, brought to you by Northern Tech, the makers of Mender.io. As usual, let's get started. You already know me. This is what we're doing. Mender is sponsoring all of this, and I focus on very actionable technical content that will really make you or help you make your devices more secure. Usually we do tutorials, but other sessions are optionally available too whenever inspiration hits me. So, what are we talking about today? Sockets and ports and what they mean. This sounds like something completely trivial to many of us, because if a device is connected, we know it opens a port, either ingoing, outgoing, and there is some data exchange to that. But what does it actually mean? Let me find the button. Here's the button. So, what is a socket? A socket at its very, very base level is a mental model where the server opens it on a TCP, usually on IP network, usually TCP IP network. And then once it's open, another device entity can connect to it. It does not describe what kind of data is being pushed through it or whatever. It really is just, it's a transparent primitive for pushing in data at one end and the data falling out at the other end again, and usually over a network. So if a device would be identified through its socket, then obviously a server could only offer one service, which is not exactly practical. So already very, very early in the history of network computing, people defined the concept of ports. A port is a specific number, a 16-bit number. And if you connect to a server, you have to also specify the number in order to reach a specific socket. Many of those port numbers are well known. Others are open to be used. For example, port 80 is traditionally HTTP. So if you are running an unencrypted HTTP server, a web server, then people will expect the server to show up on port 80. Encrypted ones are 443, SSH is on port 22, things like that. So these have specific protocols or expectations going on there. If you're going into the higher ports, usually above 1024, then things are a little bit more free. But essentially, there is the misconception often that people are speaking of open ports, which is not true. The port is just a number. Usually they mean open sockets on a specific port. So if in communication, those are often used interchangeably, even though it's not true. If you had to boil it down to explain to somebody, then think of the IP address as the postal address, the house. So you find the right computer, the right box, and think of the port as the apartment number. So in a specific building, there can be many apartments. 1, 0, 100. It really depends on how the building is designed. And all of them can offer specific services or not. Like there's a building where you can have numbers of offices, for example, or a shop or whatever. The port in itself does not specify what is going on there. It's all up to you. You could run an HTTP server on an SSH port. There's nothing that stops you. It just doesn't match expectations. So now we have now we have the buildings. We have the addresses. And you would think there's so many computers on this world. Nobody will find my port in order to attack it, which is not true. Because the IPv4 space, like the IP addresses that you actually know, they are very, very exhaustive. So if you are an attacker with not exactly a superpower, but a couple of bucks to spare, then there's nothing that keeps you from just setting up a server which does a port scan of the full internet. And that takes them a couple of hours. After that, you know all accessible sockets, usually referred to as ports. So I'm gonna be jumping back and forth here too. Then you know all accessible or public ports on all of the internet. I'm not kidding. This is happening. And once you know what ports are open, then you do poke them a little bit in order to find out, hey, what kind of service or protocol is going on there. This is totally trivial because you, as I explained in the beginning, the client connects to the server. If it is a well-known protocol like HTTP, then it often is enough to connect, and the server will send a little banner which tells them, hey, I'm this kind of server, this is what I offer, blah, 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 blah. So let's put things together. You have a port scan of all of the internet, and you have protocols which give you information automatically. I mean, what could possibly go wrong? Nothing at all, I guess. But Shodan, for example, just shows you all of this. If you haven't ever heard of Shodan, go check it out. They offer a free version with very limited results, but it gives you a very scary idea of what is going on the internet. I said, hey, show me all boxes which have the port 8123 open, for no deep reason other than I just happened to type that number. And then I said, give me all of those boxes in Germany. And I could randomly pick one. This is the IP. It was yesterday. Probably today, the same, maybe not. There's no problem. They can just rescan all day long, right? And you can drill into it. Because, as I said, there's protocols which give you information voluntarily. I just clicked on that server. Once Shodan found it, I scrolled down and said, like, hey, what's going on port 8123? It told me, hey, on this specific box, there's an HTTP style server running on that port. This is its hello. This is all of the information. Awesome, right? I mean, what else could you want if you want to attack a protocol, a box? Probably, if you know how to take over that one box, you'd say, I found it out. Where does it apply? And then you can even click on the hash in the top and then say, which other service are running exactly the same service on exactly the same port? And it tells me, hey, there's almost 4K boxes on the internet running exactly that service. Why am I telling that? Even if you're running a small fleet, 100 devices, 50 devices or 10K devices, it really doesn't matter because nobody is doing that manually. If you are putting something on the internet, then it will be scanned, it will be fingerprinted, and there will be automatic attacks on it. So what can we do about it? We can do our slides properly. I obviously messed up here. Please ignore. So we can't hide something which is offered, but we can hide that an offer is accessible to everybody. I told you the port scan is sweeping all of the internet. But what if a port scan couldn't see our port? Obviously, somebody who wants to use the port also can't see it. But is there maybe a way so a user of said port can say, hello, I am here. I want to use that service now. And that's called port knocking. In port knocking, you send a small SYN request, which is like you attempt a new connection. You send a connection attempt to your server on a port which is closed. Nothing's going on there. And the server says, hey, somebody tried to connect to this port. Is it the right one? Let's check for the next. And if you are able to send this number of a sequence of requests to a specific port sequence, then the server says, hey, somebody obviously knows our secret. I'm going to open the right port for them. And this is called port knocking. It still doesn't hide the service completely because something needs to react on what's going on the interface. But it makes it not accessible without a little bit pre-dance. How does it work then? Under the hood, it's really just a connection request. This is an example implementation in Python. You can see that there's no magic or whatever. It really just like says, hey, connect to that port. And then it times out, but the server knows that something was going on. The secret, therefore, is to knock which ports. That does mean it does not give you user authentication or whatever. It just says, hey, you're hiding ports. If you want to be more advanced, then you can use single packet authorization. In that mindset, you send a carefully crafted package, including a secret, and signed/encrypted by a pre-shared key to a specific port, and only if a package which is correctly signed and created arrives there, then a new port is opened. That's obviously a lot more secure, but it requires pre-sharing mechanisms. It requires a custom binary or a specific tool on the connecting device to be present, and the SPA server running on a specific port. So it might be useful under some circumstances, and I wanted to add it in here as an example or as something you should ever heard of. But it doesn't feel super great to me. It's around for completeness. The default implementation here that I could find is fwnob. It seems to work. I've tried it. But as I said, you have to have both sides. Whereas if you're doing simple port knocking, it's good enough to have the server correctly configured, and the rest can be a bash script, a Python script, or whatever. And with all that explanations and rummaging being done, let us look at how this actually is meant to work in practical. So here we come. hopefully. At this stage, remove this one. Come on. Okay. As opposed to my usual terminal sessions, here's a little bit of code today. Hopefully it's large enough so you can see it. I have a very, very simple port knocking daemon here and a secret service. The secret service which I have is literally just a very simple echo. Where it is? No, come on. I just had it around earlier. Here it is. So this is the service. Once you connect, it just says, hey, you successfully knocked. Here's the secret service. How does it work? There's a daemon running, which listens for the incoming packages, walks through the chain. If you made it successfully, then it instructs the firewall, the end of tables firewall, to open the port, only for a couple of seconds. This is running on a Raspberry Pi 4 back there, and I've got the simple implementation running. I've got a pre-canned so-called knockd implementation running, and I've got the fwnob implementation running on subsequent ports. If I just scan them now with nmap, which is the simple port scanner, then it tells me filtered. So it's not closed. Obviously, some computer is there, but it just doesn't respond. Now, if I use the knocking sequence, it says knock port 7K, 8K, 9K, and then, yay, the port is being opened and I can access it, which is what we hoped for. This is a re-implementation, obviously. If we want to use the canned one, knockd, this also works. You can use it, but it is kind of like out of maintenance as far as I can tell. So use with caution, I would say. And obviously the most complicated one with fwnob, it also works. I knocked, I reached the secret service. But you can see that this requires a cipher key and a secret. And sharing that one around is a lot more complicated than just a simple sequence of ports. That's why I said, plus you need to have the tool. So use it at your will, but I'm not super convinced of it. As always, I will put all of this on Mender Hub as a tutorial how you can do your simple port knocking. And what should you actually take away now? You should understand that if you are using a well-known protocol like HTTP, then it will always yield information about your box if you offer it. And often you unintentionally offer it because you build a device which has a specific functionality, and you design it so it is only outgoing connections or only on field buses or whatever. And then somebody says, hey, but I need an admin web interface. And then, boom, you have an admin web interface offering port 80 or 443. And you usually don't recode a full HTTP server, so you slap in something which your build system offers, like Apache, LightTDPD, whatever. And just by adding this, people can take very, very elaborate guesses on what your box is running and what is in there. If you put something like this on the internet, it will be scanned. It doesn't matter if it's one or if it is 1,000 devices, it will be scanned. So if you really need to put a custom communication channel on there, try to use a silent protocol, which does not yield a lot of information already if somebody just tries to connect to the port. And if it is possible, if both sides can do the dance, port knocking can help you to hide the service a little bit. It makes them less obviously accessible, but it does not give you like strong authentication. It just means that your key port will not show up directly in the search engines anymore, in the algorithms, which is probably helpful already, because then you can circumvent the fingerprinting and everything. That's what I wanted to show you today. The next session will be in 2 weeks already. I had to push this one back a little bit. And another very famous topic is user input sanitation. Follow me along for a journey into Lil Bobby Tables. We all know him. We all love his parents. If not, if this doesn't ring a bell for you, well done. You know what you should join. And that's it for today's Device Dojo. Hit subscribe roughly here if you don't want to miss the next session, and drop a comment below whether you've got questions about what we covered, ideas, future episodes. I'd love to hear from you. And if you're ready to implement professional OTA updates in your own projects and devices, check out Mender.io. And all the links are, as always, in the description. See you around in the next episode.